Good. All right, Ecclesiastes, I'm going to focus on chapter, which chapter? 7. But before, let me get in some of your issues. There's a lot here that I want to cover from what you wrote. And I don't know if we'll be able to finish chapter 7. We might have to go over it next time, but next time will definitely be the last day, whatever happens. Good. All right. First of all, Goldstein, a quick fun fact. You ask why he compares a good name to oil, right? If you look at the Hebrew, there's a play on words between Shem and Shemen. This is the reason. Right. Of course, oil has the, so let me just write this in the chat, right? For the play on words, just so you can get a little bit some of the. So Shem, this is, let me just tell you where it is. This is verse 1, 7 verse 1. Shem means name. Shemen means oil. Okay, so he's doing a play on words. Of course, oil also has the connotation of festivities, right? Weddings, parties, right? That's oil was used as a fragrance, right? For those of you who were wondering, what is he talking about, right? Oil was the perfume of the time. It was fragranced oil, right? And they would put oil on their hair, right? Oil on their bodies. Ruth, remember Ruth is putting oil, right? She's anointing herself. So oil is always before a party, you put oil, right? So connotation of happiness. Okay, so that was just a small detail. Granik, so yes, interesting observation. He's wondering, right, why Ecclesiastes, right, when Ecclesiastes is going on and on in chapter 7, right, about all these dark moments being good, right, or better in the translation, right, right, better is the house of mourning, better is vexation, better is death, right, and so forth. So he's like, well, isn't wisdom supposed to lead to happiness? Apparently not, right? Not in our text. Not only. Can anyone capture, based on what we've done so far, does anyone have an idea what wisdom here in this text is? What does it mean to be wise? What are you capable of doing when you're wise? Based on what you know so far, anybody want to venture an explanation on what is the wisdom we're getting here? What are we learning? Are we learning to be happy? What are we learning?
I think it's more to learn that you're teaching somebody else. You're providing basically wisdom and prosperity to people who need it. That's what I believe wisdom is when you help other people. It's not really benefiting yourself. It's more of you take what you know, what you experience, and you provide that love and prosperity to other people who require it, so they can get that wisdom and pass it on. It's like a
So
chain.
I get it that you pass on wisdom, but what is the wisdom we're supposed to be learning from this text? Remember, he's crazy, he's going back and forth, right? So it's hard to pinpoint what he's trying to teach. So yes, we have to transmit it, but what is it that he's teaching us really? And Granick is right, and also Oliveira is complaining. He's going here and then there, saying contradicting himself. So what's the message, right? Let's see. Who else would like to try their hand? Wagler, tell us.
Is it that wisdom is suffering?
You're close, but it's not only that, because he's also telling you to enjoy life, right? So what is he saying? Should we suffer or should we enjoy life? What's he teaching us? Alim, you want to try?
I believe he's teaching us how to navigate suffering through experience of suffering. So you know how like when you take a vaccine, right, you're putting the virus into your immune system, so your immune system can create antibodies, right, and be stronger for when you actually get that virus. So basically you're treating your emotions in a sense of an immune system, and through like learning how to deal with your suffering, you're vaccinating yourself, or you're vaccinating your emotions.
Interesting interpretation of the book of Ecclesiastes as a vaccine. Right? He's putting a little bit of disease in us so that when it really hits us, right, we can navigate. So I kind of like that. I can resonate with that. So yes, it's learning to navigate suffering, but not only, right? He's not only telling us this, right? So let's see. Some of you are getting half of it, but not the other half. Ram, would you like to help us out?
I believe it's unfulfilled life. The wisdom is for the unfulfilled life.
Wait, say that again. It's I couldn't hear.
Unfulfilled life.
Wisdom is to have an
No, no. His wisdom is to to experience unfulfilled life.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he's
he gains wisdom from that. But what is the teaching? What are we supposed to get out of this crazy book, right? That's my question. Does that make sense?
yeah. He's basically saying that live life to the fullest, and even the foolish and the wise people eventually will die.
Okay, so now you're saying the opposite. You're saying, live
Okay.
life. So should we suffer or should we enjoy? What's the
No, we should enjoy life because of the fact that we all gonna die one day. So enjoy your life regardless to
Okay.
what.
Well, now she's giving us the other side. Some of you are saying Ecclesiastes is there to teach us how to suffer. Now she's saying teaches us how to enjoy life. Which one is it? Norena, save us.
Oh, okay. I think that is Ecclesiastes is more based in appreciating all the moments in life, and then it doesn't mean that it teach to us that we get the strength through the pain, to the bad moments. Sometimes we pass for something, but there is a reward after that. Everything happened for a reason.
Okay, you're on the right track, right, Norena? He's what we're getting in this text is both, right? Solomon is trying to teach us how to navigate all of life, right? So yes, he's trying to teach us how to the art of pleasure in a certain sense. How do we really enjoy life? What are the steps we need to take? What attitude should we have to really enjoy life? And we saw that last time when we did chapter 2, receptivity, right? Learning to let go, to surrender. But then he's also, especially today, going to teach us how to navigate the pain, how to suffer artfully, right? This is a whole art of life where he's basically saying this is happy. Wisdom is not meant to lead you to happiness. Wisdom is meant to lead you to life, right? Wisdom is not here to teach you how to be happy. Wisdom is here to teach you how to live, and that means to live life at the fullest, both the darkness, both the light, right? How to navigate the heights and the lows, right? So this is really a Nietzschean book, right? When, again, I'm quoting Nietzsche because they're so similar, right? When Nietzsche talks about,
The life prepared to us like become a warrior.
sorry?
The life to prepare to us to become a warrior, and
Yeah,
just being in the good and the bad times no matter what.
that's it. That's the idea, right? So you guys, if you really want to understand Ecclesiastes, read Nietzsche, right? It's the same mindset, right? Very similar. So that, and for us, right, especially when we're, and especially, by the way, this is how this text is subversive, right? With regards to the rest of the Hebrew Bible. Rest of the Hebrew Bible telling us, actually, no, I'm going to rephrase myself, right? Rest of the Hebrew Bible telling you to live, not necessarily be happy, but to live, right? When God calls the Israelites and says, choose life, he's not saying choose happiness. He's saying choose life, right? So this is very different from this kind of utilitarian, view. The Greeks, right, talked about wisdom as the road to happiness, right? That's a Greek idea that wisdom leads you to like the balanced, happy life, right? The Hebrews is different. There's room for chaos, right? And we see this text is very chaotic. In the chaos, right? What the text is saying is embrace the chaos, embrace all of life, and learn to navigate the storms of life instead of simply reaching stability, right? This is one of the main, make sure you jot this down, because this is one of the main differences between the Greek view of wisdom and the Hebrew view of wisdom. Right? The Greek view of wisdom, if you read Plato, Aristotle, it's all about balance, stability, harmony, happiness, right? Hebrew is all about turbulence, chaos, the highs, the lows, the extremes, right? There's no balance here, right? And so it's about really how do we really navigate this chaos without becoming, right? The Greek view is a little more stable. This is more, right, how to dwell in the chaos, right? Does this help a little bit to get the spirit of the text? Are you following me? Put your hand in the screen. Okay. Let's continue a little bit. I'll get more questions later, right? So hopefully that answers your question, Granik. Now, both you and Oliveira are complaining about how he is going back and forth between different views. It's as though Solomon is seeing something and then he's seeing the exact opposite, right? Everything is hateful, everything sucks, everything is beautiful, enjoy life, it's amazing, right? So I would suggest here that Solomon is, his perception is shifting throughout the text, right? There's two ways to perceive reality. There's what you see what is, and then you see what truly is, right? This is the physical perception and the metaphysical perception, right? We know that you can look at life what is and it looks terrible, and then you can look deeper and see something more, right? I'm suggesting here, yes, like Ahmed is saying, there are two Solomons. He's oscillating between realism and idealism, or between seeing what is and seeing more profoundly with the eyes of faith, right? There is the eyes of realism and the eyes of faith. There's a physical vision, metaphysical vision. And Solomon is kind of shifting between the two. So there are times when he's just in despair, he's seeing with human eyes. Or the Hindu ways to say it is very nice. There's the notion of the third eye in Hinduism. This is very helpful, right? You have the two eyes, see what is, and then you have the third eye, which perceives deeper, like more deeply, right? Solomon is shifting between his two eyes and his third eye. So you'll have moments where he's like seeing everything sucks, we're all gonna die, and so forth. And then there are moments where he catches a glimpse of a deeper dimension, deeper reality with his third eye, right? And then he goes back to despair and so forth. So I wouldn't see this as a defect in the text. He is leading us through his journey. We are like this. One day everything is horrible, you hate life, and then another day you see more deeply into your situation, you understand why you're here, what's going on, right? This is very human. This is oscillating between your human eyesight and your divine eyesight, right? And Solomon is showing us how that works within his own system, right? Does that answer you a little bit, Granik and Olivera, on the shifting? Put your hand in the screen if you, okay, so Granik and Olivera, where are you, Olivera? Okay, you're good, okay, great. Okay, so this should help you see, right, again, right, and now just going to Kestenbaum's point, right? Kestenbaum mentions, Ecclesiastes uses the word crooked. I think he mentions 3 times, Kestenbaum, right? I would have to check if it's the same.
I counted 3, but it's possible that there are more after.
Is the same word in Hebrew each time?
I think so. Let me check the Hebrew.
Yeah, check to see, because it has to be exactly the same word for it. So yeah, so I'll try to address that while you look, right? Why, maybe I'll ask you, why do you think he's using this word crooked, or that you cannot straighten something that is crooked? Why is he saying this so often? What's the message? What's the subliminal message here? That you can't straighten what is crooked. And this is something, by the way, crooked is the opposite of, in the Hebrew of straight, right? Which in the Hebrew is yashar, and which is also another word for righteous. Okay, knowing this, crooked therefore is the opposite of straight, is the opposite of righteous, unrighteous. This might be the meaning. And yet he's saying you cannot straighten certain things. Okay, let's see what you come up with. Pierre-Antoine, what do you think?
I think he just uses it because, like, I think it's just to show that, like, we speak about, like, this duality between, like, what he sees in a physical sense and, like, what he sees in a metaphysical sense. And I think it's talking about, like, that duality within humankind. And, like, I think that he's trying to show us that, does it say in the verse? Hold on, I'm so sorry. Does it consider? Yeah. So, like, because he says in verse 13 that consider what God has done, who can straighten what he has made crooked, at least in that sense, like, he's saying that even though humanity has, like, this duality, like, really only God, like, going back to, like, the God sense of things, like, he's tying back into, like, God can only straighten things, like, God can only make things, like, perfect, and that we're always going to have, like, this battle of, like, our two sides of how we always questioning things and how we always see things. It's like one day it's, like, super bad, and another day it's like, oh, it's not so bad if I really think about it in this way. I don't know if it's like...
Yeah, one way to see this is that he might be saying only God can straighten the crooked. It's not our job, right? Even though we're tempted all the time to straighten up everyone who's crooked or who we think are crooked, we want to fix them. And he might be saying, who can do that? Stop thinking you can do that, right? So that's one, that works nicely, Pierre-Antoine. That could be one of the meanings, right? And let's see who else has an interpretation. There might be another way to see this. Granite, go ahead.
Yeah, it could just be kind of talking about sort of just, I think this is something you had mentioned, is that like, I guess life is not like a direct sort of path. It's kind of goes this way and that and curves. And that's sort of what the whole book is about, is like, you know, yeah, I guess it's very similar to what Pierre-Antoine is saying, that it's like sort of like, yeah, like there's sort of this, I don't know, different, like two opposite like ways that we can go, and like, you know, we kind of oscillate back and forth between them.
Exactly, right? Remember I mentioned that there are two ways to find, right, to journey spiritually. There's the straight path of the Yashar, the righteous, right? The keeper of the law, right? The one who follows the precepts, right? Yashar. Crooked is Solomon over here, right? Having transgressed basically everything he could transgress, he transgressed, right? And the path is, you know, like this. And yet it is still a valid spiritual journey, right? So perhaps this might be one of the underlying, like I said before, this might be one of the underlying meanings of the text, is that there is also a crooked path to heaven, right? Or a crooked path to God, the path of the transgressor, the path of the non-yashar, right? The non-righteous. Righteous literally means straight, right, in the Hebrew. So when you're righteous, it means you're straight. But crooked implies, therefore, that you are, right, on the side of the transgressor. So this is the path of the transgressor, and yet it is still a legitimate, right, spiritual path, perhaps. Great. Kestenbaum.
I was just going to say it is the same word, ifto, which means like, yeah, crooked or twisted.
Very good.
Also, it's interesting because there is a biblical command of not straying. The biblical narrative itself says don't stray leftward or rightward from the word of God, but just be straight.
Yes.
So clearly Solomon or Kohelet is playing on this theme of not being straight.
And that text is actually in the Proverbs, isn't it? That you just quoted. Which
I think it first appears in Deuteronomy.
Oh, okay, great. And is the but it doesn't mention the word crooked, right? It's just saying don't go.
No, it just says lo tusar, don't like stray rightward or leftward.
Very good, very good. Yeah, so we're seeing, right? Absolutely. This is the person who is precisely straying from here to there, from here, right? This is, and yet, right, he's saying, right, a subversive literature. Remember, this is a subversive text. It's part of wisdom literature, going against this Deuteronomic injunction that's go straight. He's saying, well, here I am. And I'm still getting somewhere, right? Or I mean, at least we can gather from what that there is something to be learned from going crooked, right? Okay, great. Let's see, Stage, go ahead.
Well, there has been many points that I wanted to bring out, many other scriptures, but I'll go with this one. It says, Ecclesiastes. I actually wondered why we didn't do Ecclesiastes 8 and 9, because those are excellent ones as well. But Ecclesiastes 7:23 goes, all of this I tested with wisdom, and I said I will become wise, but it was beyond me. So if anybody can interpret that, and what's it called? Inculcate. With what?
So we're not there yet. We haven't even started chapter 7. I'm still on the questions, so give me some time to get there.
But this is chapter 7. We're doing chapter 7 now.
No, not yet. I'm still with the questions that everybody brought up, and then I'll get into the chapters. So we're remotely talking about it, but I'm finishing up the questions, and then we'll get there. So yes, we'll get there soon. Don't worry. Okay, let's continue. I'll get a few more questions later. I'm gonna skip over some of the last issues, except maybe Sosa, who is complaining that Solomon is bashing foolish people. Sosa, remember, Solomon himself calls he calls himself a fool at one point, an old foolish king, right? So even so. Are you there, Sosa? Yeah. So Solomon, remember, he's also the one who wrote the book of Proverbs, which is a book about how not to be a fool, right? So you see here too, again, this is a very complex man, right? Book of Proverbs, the path of the straight, right? Don't do this, don't do that. This is stupid, this is wise, right? Very dualistic. And then you have the other Solomon, the more complex, crooked one, right? So, and so in the book of Proverbs, Solomon is bashing the fool, but in Ecclesiastes, he is the fool, right? So there is a path of the fool, right? I mean, we can see Ecclesiastes as kind of, subverting Proverbs. He's subverting his own writings, right? Saying, well, they're here, don't be a fool, but if you're a fool, like me, here's the path, right? So remember I mentioned, right? These are the gospels of the strayers, right? This is the gospels for the lost sheep, the wisdom literature. So it helps you a little bit?
Yeah, it certainly does. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So let's get into the text so that we can get to the passage that Staich mentioned. So this is a very, very complex, long chapter, very rich. Here we are going to talk about this beyond good and evil that I mentioned, that Ecclesiastes is, trying to go back before the tree of knowledge and good and evil, right? We're going to talk about that. And we're going to access the very important concept, which is throughout the book, of the fear of God, which is very important to understand the theology of the book. So, but let's take it slow. The book, chapter 7 actually begins in chapter 6, verse 12. Hold on. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't begin there. I mean, there's no real chapters, in the Hebrew Bible, but you have a question that is asked in 6, verse 12, which is being answered in chapter 7. Okay, so let's go to chapter 6, verse 12. Everybody with me? Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay, great. Okay, so he says this. He asks, who can know? And then my translation says what is best, but the actual Hebrew, of course, is what is good. Okay, who can know the good? Okay, we are right here in the garden, right? In Genesis 3. Who can know the good? And in Genesis 3, you have the woman in front of the tree of good and knowledge of good and evil, right? So here he is saying, who can know? There is no tree. We are not meant, right, to be eating that tree. We're not meant to know. So he's asking, what is the good? Which is incidentally the great question of philosophy, right? If you go to the Greeks, that's the main question. What is the good? How do we get there, right? And so what's interesting is as we get in chapter 7, we see that he's going to answer this because in the Hebrew, it's going to be like a poem. Good, da-da-da-da-da. Good, da-da-da-da-da. So he's giving us what translates in chapter 7 as better, right? When you see a good name is better, or it's better to go to the house of mourning, this is actually the word tov, which is good. So he's directly answering the question, right? So chapter 6, verse 12, what is the good? And then chapter 7, the good is this, the good is that, the good is this, right? And so we have an answer. Now, what's interesting about chapter 7 is the good is found in strange places, right? Where what he calls good, we wouldn't call good, right? He says here, well, maybe the first one. Good is a good name. Okay, that's good. Then he says, good is the house of mourning. Then he goes, good is confusion. Good is a wise man's reproof. Good is the end of the matter. I think there's yeah. So here we are, good, like I think Granick noticed, I'm like, I don't think this is good, the house of mourning. And, what's this word, vexation? Anybody have a better translation? I don't even know what the hell this means in English. Verse 3, what do you guys have in other translations? I have vexation, which is Old English. Staich, what do you have?
7, verse 3.
Yeah.
Better is distress than laughter.
Thank
But
you.
the sadness of the face makes the heart better.
Distress. Okay.
Are you talking about the word cost? Doesn't that usually mean anger?
I know, right? That's weird. You're right.
Mine translates it as grief, but
Yeah.
it means.
Maybe biblical Hebrew is different from modern Hebrew. I don't know. Yeah, but you're right. That's interesting. I'll have to look at that. You're right. Okay, let's work with anger slash distress, maybe frustration, right? That could be, right? So here he's saying, good is the house of mourning, good is anger slash frustration slash distress. Good is, let's see, I'm skipping a little bit, the end of a matter, and so forth, right? So this is not what we would call good immediately. So let's stop a little bit and see what he's trying to say. Why does he say, and I'm just going to pick three, right? I'm going to pick good is the house of mourning, right? Good is frustration or distress, and then good is the end of a matter. I'm just picking and choosing here. Okay. So let's stop a little bit and try to understand what he's trying to say. Why does he see these as good, right? Remember when we did chapter 3, right? We already know that for Solomon, everything is good, right? The dark, the light, the happy, the sad, right? All of these are have their own beauty, right? So now we can go a little deeper. So let's try and figure out, why is it that the day of death is good, according to Solomon? Tell me. Let's try and think about that. Or the house of mourning. Why is the house of mourning good? Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
I think it could be like in a literal sense. Like I remember you said in like at least in ancient like Jewish traditions that like genealogy was very important. Like that's how you determine who's like a good person by like their family name. So like if somebody dies and there's somebody to replace them, that's like quote unquote good. Or like
except you're not talking about the birth.
Yeah, but I was just saying like if you take, I don't know, for face value, but like I guess like you could also say that like because death is a part of life, like you know, like you're supposed to mourn, like it's normal to grieve, and that's like just a part of life. So it's good when you grieve, because if you really think about it, if someone doesn't grieve a person, that seems to be rather odd in a sense. So that's
You're
what
right? He's saying grieving is good. And so let's try and figure out, let's go more deeply into why is grieving so good. So on the one hand, yes, it's a way to connect to the other person or to kind of honor them, right? But what else? What else is good about grief? Stage, go ahead.
Well, honestly, I wasn't going down that road. I was thinking the death is behind it. What is good about death is it's the ending, it's the ultimatum. It's the satisfaction of man is what death brings. It's like I said, ultimatum. You have the beginning and the end.
So how is that good? How is this ultimatum good?
Ultimatum, satisfaction of life. You have finally been satisfied, because if you go to Genesis, it says he has died at this an age and fully satisfied with life. And I think that's what Solomon is saying. Satisfaction. Once person dies, they have been satisfied with what life has given them.
If they die at a certain age.
Well, I mean, it all depends. I mean, we know that, I don't know how many people know, but Solomon has strayed from the path of righteousness afterwards. So he could be talking about one thing about the other. I don't know how old he was when he strayed, but at this time, I think that he still had wisdom. So God has still given him the right to write what is an inspiration. Therefore, I think that's what he was saying. That's what he might have been.
Okay, yeah, that works with the third passage, which is good is the end of the matter. I think you're going in that direction, right? It's good.
Let's go with that, sure.
Okay, great. So just a clarification though on something you said, right? You're saying Solomon strayed, but this is before he strayed, and therefore he's still wise, right? Remember, what we're suggesting here is that we are here in the wisdom of someone who is in the process of straying, right? So to stray doesn't necessarily mean you lose your wisdom, right? There is a wisdom found in the precise act of straying, which is where we are. Solomon is throughout this text straying, right? And yet there is wisdom to be found there, right? Remember, there are two paths, right? There's the path of the straight and the path of the crooked. And in the path of the crooked, there is also a wisdom, right?
I'm
That's
sorry.
the idea here.
One thing. So you're saying that he was still wise when he actually strayed away from God?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I disagree. Well, you know, I'm religious and I disagree, but this is a philosophy class.
Because remember, right, you can stray. What the book is, what's powerful about this book is that this is the path of someone who has strayed, and yet it is a path which brings him to God, or where God is with him along the path to a certain degree. His wisdom hasn't left him, right? The Spirit of God hasn't left him throughout this straying, and that's why he's able to find wisdom even in the straying, right? So yes.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can imagine how this is not a orthodox idea, right? And again, this is why the mother's house is sometimes difficult to eat what is served on the table.
I'm not an orthodox.
So very good. All right. Ram, do you have something to add? Go ahead.
Well, this is my take on going to a house of mourning rather than going to like a party, because what Solomon is saying, when you go to a house of mourning, you can see someone dying, you can reflect on your life, and you can, you know, be a little bit wiser than if you just go to a party, then you're just thinking of partying and you're not knowing what life holds. You know, you reflect basically when you go to a house of mourning for a person.
Okay, very good, right? This is where we come to terms with our haven, right? That we are just breath. The house of mourning is where the breath has left, right? This is where we are faced with our havel nature, right? And remember, this is the beginning of wisdom here in this text. Only when you realize that you're mortal and finite and powerless can you begin to receive, right? Can you begin to learn and grow and so forth, right? As long as we're powerful, knowledgeable, in control, there is nothing that we can either receive or learn. No wisdom, no pleasure. For those who have not yet come to terms with the Hevel nature, right? So very good, Brown. So yeah, that might be one of the ways, right, to understand. And again, Solomon is not against parties, right? We know that several times he says, eat, drink, anoint yourself, right? But he's saying we need to also enter the house of mourning, right? There is also something there to be gathered, right, from that house. Goldstein, go ahead.
I think Solomon himself is telling us the reason why he says that in the end of the verse, where he says, "For that is the end of all man, and the living should take it to heart." He's literally telling you have to know that this is how you're going to end, and everything is nothing, and that's why it's better.
And when you know this, right, when you realize the finiteness, is when you can begin to step into this deeper wisdom, right, which is the wisdom of surrender, of receptivity, of trust, right? You can't trust as long as you're in control. Trust comes when you realize I have nothing and I am nothing, right? And at that moment you enter a different, how shall I put it? A different, what's the word I'm looking for? A different gear, like in the car, or a different dimension, or a different level, right, of life. I think this is what's going on. Are you guys following the notion of Hevel, how it opens you up to a completely different way of dwelling in the world? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Put your hand in the screen. Okay, right, good. Okay, let's go to the next one. What do I have? What did I write in the chat? Yes, good is frustration, distress, anger, right? Better than, okay, revelry. Yeah, good. So why is that the case? Why is confusion better than happiness? Or frustration better than happiness? For those of you who've read the book of Job, you would be able to understand this passage seamlessly. Those of you who studied Job with me, you would know what's going on. Why is confusion here better than revelry? What is that? Is there a better word than revelry? Somebody had Stage. What's your translation? I was liking your translation. Verse 3.
Verse 3.
Yeah.
Chapter, what chapter?
7.
Chapter 7, verse 3 says, better is distress than laughter.
Okay,
for the sadness of
yes,
the face makes the heart better.
Love it. Okay, great. Thank you. Good. What's your translation? Just curious. What is it?
New World Translation.
New World?
Yep.
Great. I like it. Okay, perfect. So, okay, better distress than laughter. Why? Let's analyze this a little bit. What, or not better, good is distress. Let's see. Pierre-Antoine, go ahead.
Maybe it's just to say like because in happiness, like you can be ignorant and like you can be stagnant in where you are in life because I can only speak Christian philosophy. So like in Christian philosophy, like most of the time when you're in a time of peace and prosperity, like there's like you have to be expecting like something is like there's going to be a turbulence in your season, your like walk with God or whatever. So if you're happy all the time, and if like your walk with God, speaking in a Christian sense, is just always happy, know that something's going wrong, because like that's not how it's supposed to be. But like if you're frustrated, if you're distressed, like you can look to God all the time, because like at least then you know He's there watching over you, like no matter what. In a sense, that's how I take it.
Yes, right? Happiness is a form of stagnation, whereas turbulence is, well, it's a crisis. Something has to give, something has to change, something has to, So I like that, right? Very good. Turbulence or distress is kind of pushing us forward in a way that happiness, right, wouldn't. Alim, you should be able to answer this because you mentioned it in your essay and your reading assignment. Connecting to Book of Job. Tell me a little bit. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm alluding to?
Yeah, I wrote about it in my homework. So, I mean, through this pain, right, you learn how to like submit to God, right? So, in the book of Job, he's like on top of the world, right? He's following all the rules of God and he's getting everything that he wants. But then when something like, I guess, like turbulent happens in his life, he tries to go back and control that. And that's when he meets God. And then he realizes that he cannot predict God. So both of them, like, I guess, have like the same message that you have to submit to both like the blessings and turbulences of God.
Okay, nice, right? Absolutely. This is the idea here of, right, the frustration, the confusion that Job also finds himself in when he doesn't know what hit him, right? And we see that through this confusion, right, in the book of Job, he moves into becoming a better version of himself, right? At least that's how I'm teaching it when I teach it, right? So here we have the same opportunity, right? As soon as you're confused and going through some dark times and you don't know where you are and what's happening, good, says Ecclesiastes, right? Celebrate this moment, because this is a moment where you are moving beyond yourself to a better version of yourself. We have in alchemy, I really like very much the practice of alchemy in the Middle Ages. This is the precursor of chemistry, right? They would, as you know, they're trying to produce gold, right? And they have a moment in the whole chemical reactions, which they call the moment of putrefaction. This is the first, right? This is the first chemical reaction when they put everything together. And it's a moment where it's very, everything is very dark and kind of dense, and you don't know where the chemical reaction is going to go. It's all like, right, gooey and disgusting, right? And what they know, the alchemists know, that you have to go through this phase to get to the next reaction, to get to the next level of refinement, right? Remember, they're trying to refine lead into gold. So they have this moment of putrefaction where everything is disgusting and gooey and gross, right, is actually the prerequisite for it to get to the next level of refinement and so forth. So same idea here, perhaps when we go through confused, dark, horrible times, right, angry, frustrated times, right? When our emotions are toxic, 100% toxic emotions wandering around in your bloodstream, right? Saying here, this is good, right? You're moving. This is an opportunity for you to move to the next level, to move into your next higher self, right? Okay, great. We're doing pretty good. Let's see. Let's go to the last one. Good is the end of a matter, not the beginning. What does that mean? Stage, would you like to give it a try? You were talking about it earlier.
Good is the end of the matter.
Yep, and not the beginning.
That's exactly what I was saying. The
Yeah.
ultimatum. It's the satisfaction. Once you've been satisfied with life, you've died satisfied. There's not, because if you go to Ecclesiastes 9, 5 and 10, that's I wanted to go through that, and Ecclesiastes 8 as well, but we're not doing that. He talks about that there's nothing after death.
Yeah.
So once you have finished, you started, you've lived your life, you have satisfied everything that you need to, you have mourned, you have been happy, you have been overly happy, you have overly mourned, and afterwards, when everything is finished, it's over. That's it. Everything has that, how could you say it? The line has ended.
Okay, very good, right?
It's no longer.
Excellent, right? So at the end, you can really see the whole picture, right? In a way that you can't if you're still in the beginning. And this is why a lot of us, when we're in a certain situation, right, we start to judge where we are, and what Ecclesiastes is saying, wait until the end of the matter, and then you'll see that it was all good, right? Let me say that again, because this is very important information. Very often you're in a place in your life where you're like, this is bad. I don't like this, I hate it. Ecclesiastes is advising us, wait until the end of it. Go through it until the end. And then when you look back, you will see it was good that you went through that, right? So we have to, what he's inviting us to do here is to follow through. Don't judge where you are situationally until you've finished that whole ordeal, right? Until you've walked through it completely. Only then will you be able to see in hindsight that it was good you went through all of these, right? So that's maybe one way to understand it. Now, I do want to finish this chapter today. And so I'm wondering how many of you can stay 15 minutes longer today? Put your hand on the screen. Okay, so a few of you can do that. So I'll continue with those of you who can, and if you have to go, you can go, but then you can listen to the recording, right? I want to go and finish. This is very important. I want to do the fear of God today because it connects. So I don't want to break it off. Okay, so let's continue. Now, let's look at 7, verse 13, right? Which is again a poor translation. Consider God's doing. This is a word we already know. Ra'ah, which means to see, which we've seen already, right, in Genesis and so forth. So here he's saying, see, right, or think, or consider, right, what God has done. And then he says something that shouldn't surprise us, right? We know this already from chapter 3. I'm trying to read. Who can straighten what he has twisted? We've been over that, right? And then, in a time of good fortune, enjoy. In a time of misfortune, reflect. This is the word also ra'ah, to see, right? And then he says the one no less than the other is God's doing. In other words, God has created both. He has created the good times, has created the bad times. Both are to be equally embraced, right? And we know all this already. This is not new, right? We know this from chapter 3. So here we have again, right? Follow up to chapter 3, where he's saying, basically receive from life the good and the bad, the beginning and the end, right? The house of mourning and the house of feasting, the house, right? The frustration and the laughter, both God has made. Both are to be received as gifts, right? Every season in your life, right? The invitation is here to receive every season of your life as a gift, right? Now, he continues. Okay, so this, so far we're good. We know this already from chapter 3. Now we're going into new territory. This is difficult territory. I'm going to be running around and doing, checking other passages. So it's going to be a bit complex, but I want to take the time to do this. So go to chapter, verse 15, right? Verse 15. So continuing. Now he's going to go beyond just good times, bad times. He's going to go into morality. And this is where things get very interesting and very subversive, right? Right and wrong, right? So he's going to begin like this. In my own, okay, verse 15, everybody with me? Verse 15, put your hand in the screen. Okay. In my own brief span of time, I have seen both of these things. A good man perishes, a wicked man endures, right? Verse 16. Now, here's the interesting passage, which, by the way, still scholars are debating what it means. This is still the interpretation I will give you is one among many, right? It's just one among many. So here he says this, do not overdo goodness, right? Don't act the wise man to excess, or you will be dumbfounded. So he's saying, don't be too good. Then he turns and says, don't overdo wickedness. Don't be a fool, or you'll die before your time. So first of all, he's saying, don't be too good. Don't be too evil, right? Okay, pretty good advice, right? The middle way, maybe, right? Preaching moderation, maybe the Aristotelian virtues, right? And then he says this, it is best, and this is a very strange way he writes this, right? It is best to grasp the one without letting go of the other. In other words, he's saying, be both good and wicked. That's what he's saying. Okay. Now, what in the world does this mean to be both good and wicked? And then he said, and this is the punchline now. It is better to grasp the one without letting go of the other. For the one who fears God, and this is the translation sucks, actually in the Hebrew is will escape. Will escape. This is so complex, right? So he's saying, hold on to one, don't let go to the other. The one who fears God will escape this dilemma, right? So this is how I would like to suggest we can understand this, right? Here he's saying, yes, the word in the Hebrew, yetse, is yatsa, right? This means escape or go outside, go out, or, you know, kind of like, yes, go out, exit, right? Yatsa. So it's translated here poorly. I don't know what the hell they translate this like this. The one who fears God will do his duty, but I don't see that. It's not there, right? I don't know what translations you guys have, but the Hebrew word is the one who fears God will escape or will go out, right? Okay, so let's stop on this a little bit. Visualize this, right? Solomon just said this. Hang on to one, don't let go to the other. Meaning hang on to good, don't let go to wickedness. So you're between the good and the wicked. And then he says, here you are hanging. And then he says, but the one who fears God will escape, will step out, will be set free to a certain degree. Okay, let's try and see if you can come up with some explanations before I give you what my ponderings on this. It's a strange passage, right? Which translators, commentators still discussing. When I took this class, we were just fighting over this, right? It's very hard to find an interpretation. Granik, help us out.
Is it possible that he's saying that there's sort of this conflict going on in a person between all these, all these kinds of like, sort of like what we were talking before, going to this way, going to that way, and like this like sort of crooked path, I guess, of like sort of it's sort of, there's like the chaotic world, I guess, and then you're sort of I guess like being like escaping from the I don't know, I guess it doesn't really fit with what we were saying before, but I guess stepping out of like the conflict and just sort of being there and like being okay with all the different things and relating to everything as good, even the bad times. And that's sort of like a way of like stepping out of the chaos.
Yes, you're on the right track. He's basically saying, well, I'll tell you later. I'm just going to hear a few of you first, right? Yes, so you're sensing, right? There's a way to step out of the crookedness of the back and forth. This is what you're sensing, right? He's going back and forth. This is right, this is right, this is right, this is wrong, this is wrong. He's confused, right? Now he's saying, here I am, torn, right? Between the two. But the one who fears God will escape. So you're on the right track. Let's see who else wants to give this a try. Ram, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm right here, but the way I see it is that he's saying, well, my interpretation actually is that when you do good, don't go about boasting about it, because of the fact that you're not gonna go to the heaven, or in another word, that is, do something, but do it in silence. Like, or for instance, let's take an example, like you give donation to someone, but don't go boasting about it, because so you can get recognition or praises or stuff like that.
Nice, I like that. Yes, don't overdo it. Don't get all puffed up about it. Likewise, don't get too puffed up about your evil deeds, that get you in trouble, right? So yes, I like that. But then it gets confusing, right? With this thing we're hanging on to the two. So let's see. Goldstein, I thought I saw your hand at one point. Are you still here?
Yeah, I did. I was going to answer it based on something else that Solomon said in verse 20. He goes on to say, "For there is no man so wholly righteous that he only does good and never sins." So maybe he's trying to say that everybody sins either way. Even if somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm only so good," everybody sins. So if you kind of try to bury your head in the sand and ignore it, then the sin is doing nothing for you. It's just making you a sinner. But if you embrace it and use it to improve yourself and to improve your life and everything else, then it actually ends up being a good thing. But you still have to do this by embracing the fact that we mess up and sin sometimes.
Nice. I like the connection. He's basically saying we are, whether we like it or not, we are both yasha and crooked. Here, what's the word for crooked again? Kirsten Palm, are you here?
Yeah, it's me'avet.
Ne'avit?
Me'avet. Mem ayin vav tav.
Thank you. Mem ayin vav ma'avet. Ma'avet? Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have yashar, which means righteous, right? And we have ma'avet, which means crooked. Ecclesiastes is saying, we're both, right? Let no one think they're only crooked. They're also righteous. Let no one think they're only righteous. They're also crooked. This is why I was saying, even though he's in the transgressor's path and he's crooked, there's still wisdom. Likewise, right? And the other way, there's still transgression, right? So maybe so I like the parallel. Maybe he's saying, right, we are all both, but the man who fears God will escape. We still have to figure what that means, right? Okay, you guys are doing good. I like it. I like it. Alim.
I mean, the idea of fearing God, it's like very like, I mean, I'm like seeing this in like terms of Islam, like it's a very fundamental Islamic value, like throughout like the Quran, like it's like over and over again, fear God, fear God, fear God. And I mean, trying to contextualize it within this passage, however, I kind of interpreted it as like, okay, you can do what you know is good, what you know is bad to a point, but then after that, you just follow God blindly.
You're on the right track, Alim. From the perspective of Islam is helping you, and you will see connections with what you just said and what I'm about to say. So let's go there. Let's go into this fear of God, which is supposed to get us out of this mess, right? Basically, Ecclesiastes is saying, we don't know what is right, what is wrong. We are always blended. We're always caught between, right? There is no way of knowing which way is the right way to go sometimes. Sometimes it's clear, but sometimes it's not. right? And so that's when he says, but the man who fears God will escape the dilemma, will escape the dichotomy, will escape the binaries, will escape the dualism. Let's look at what fear means, okay?
Professor, can I say something?
Yes.
Like to me, I feel that it's more of what religion stands to a person. Like a person without religion, let's say they only believe in free will, right? They only go so far. Like they don't see the other side of the world. Like let's say a person who believes in religion, they have some sort of boundaries. They have some set laws. It prevents them from doing something that they wouldn't normally do. Like let's say, for instance, police, right? There's people who break the law. There's people who would like to break the law, but just knowing that police can catch them in the end, they don't do it. Just like people who, let's say, believe in God and let's say they want to kill someone, but they're like, you know what? If I kill someone, I'm gonna go to hell, and I don't want to suffer in the afterlife. So it sets boundaries for people. It's more of like a society. It puts people in their place, and it helps them follow like the right way of life, as so to speak.
So yeah, except, right, he's saying here there are moments where we don't know, where we are caught between the two extremes, right? And so what do we do then, right? When we enter the murky state of moral ambiguity, right? Perhaps this is also what he's talking about here, right? Moral ambiguity, where it's not clear what is the right thing or wrong thing to do, right? And this will happen. I used to think, I used to be very sad that the Bible didn't have an answer to all of my questions, right? In other words, I would be in a dilemma and I would really desperately try to find a scripture and there was nothing there, right? So this is the case, that the best scripture doesn't always prescribe for certain situations, right? So what then do we do? So let's look at this notion of the fear of God, right? I'm going to look at two passages where you have a definition of the fear of God. Isaiah, let me find it. Isaiah 50 verse 10. And then I'm going to look at Genesis 22. Let me check. I looked it up earlier, but somehow, here it is. Genesis 22 verse 12 to 14. Okay, both of these passages have a definition of the fear of God that is clear and that connects to our passage. And then we will see what is this third path, right? There's the path of good, the path of evil, and there's a third path, which is the path of the fear of God, which we will see in both passages is described as the path of faith or trust, like Alim was mentioning in the context of Islam. Same thing here. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 50 verse 10. Let me know when you're there. Okay, how many of you are there? Put your hand in the screen. Okay, I'm reading. Right, who among you fears the Lord? Okay, we have here fear, right? And heeds the voice of his servant. And then we have an explanation. Though he walk in darkness and have no light, let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely upon his God. So the fear of the Lord here has to do with darkness, not seeing, and yet you're walking, okay? You don't see, you don't understand, you're walking, continuing. But you are all kindlers of fire, girding on firebrands, walking by the blaze of your fire. These are the people who see, who think they see, who know, who know this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. They have their own fire going, right? Here he says, this has come to you from my hand, you shall lie down in pain, right? Okay, so we have first definition, and you will see it's very interesting because the text in Genesis says the same thing. Fear of the Lord is the ability to walk in darkness you don't know and to trust, right? So so first thing, right? So now let's look at Genesis. So everybody go to Genesis 12. And here, I mean, I wish I had some time to spend on this passage, because this passage has a lot of play on words which we find in our text. So there's some, I would have to take longer on that, but let's read it briefly. Verse 12. Everybody with me? Chapter 22, verse 12, Genesis. I need more hands in the screen. Okay. All right. Good. So this is right after Abraham, by the way, was asked to sacrifice his son. And he went up and he did everything as he was told. And as he was about to slay his son, right, God stops him. And this is what he tells him, right? Right after he stops him. Do not raise your hand against the boy, for now I know that you fear God, right? Etc. Since you have not withheld your son, and so forth. So here we have another situation, right? Where Abraham is walking in the darkness. He doesn't know what's happening. God just asked him to sacrifice his son. There's no logical explanation. There is no religious explanation. There's no spiritual explanation. It makes no sense. And he's walking, right? And later, I think, the New Testament, the Christian Bible, calls Abraham the ultimate man of faith, right? So both scenarios have this notion of not knowing, right? Which becomes the precursor of faith or of trust. And I think the book of Ecclesiastes is going in that direction in this passage, right? He's saying we don't know what is right and wrong, right? And in a way, we are condemned to always be a little bit of both, or condemned to just try to, walk the middle way. But then he has this moment of insight. But the man of right, the one who fears God will escape. Why? Because they can walk in a third path, right? Which is the path of blind trust, which is what Alim was saying, blind faith. You don't know where you're going, but you're walking. You're not stuck, right, between the two. You're moving, right? So very often we get paralyzed. Listen very carefully, because this is not very, very good advice I'm about to give you. Right? Everybody listening? Everybody got this? You're all with me? Okay. You know how there are certain decisions in life where you're paralyzed and you don't know which one's the right way to go, right? Some of you marriage, some of you a career, some of you whether to have a child, some of you whether to kill yourself. I don't know. There are certain situations where you will be paralyzed. You don't know what's the right way to go. And most of us, we are stuck here, hanging. This is good, but yet it's bad, but then it's good, but then it's bad, and I don't know, and I'm here, suspended, right? Ecclesiastes is saying, walk, just push through blindly, right? You don't have to know in order to walk. This is the beginning of faith. The man of faith walks even though doesn't know where he's going or where she's going. And at that moment, things begin to open up. Only when you've begun to walk in the darkness will you begin to see more clearly. But there is a time where you have to have the courage to walk in the darkness, make any decision, right? Sometimes this is what we are advised. Even if it's the wrong decision, just make a damn decision and start walking, right? And then you will begin to see more clearly, right? So this is, I think, one of the moments of insights, right, of Ecclesiastes, where he's realizing, yes, there is morality, but beyond morality, there is faith. We are in the philosophy of Kierkegaard, right? I think if you're familiar with Kierkegaard, this is what he's saying, right? There's the path of morality, right? Kierkegaard wrote this in Fear and Trembling. If you want to go further, I suggest you read this text. It's a commentary on Genesis 22, which is the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. And he says there's morality, but there is beyond morality, which he calls, right, faith. So this is what we are learning here, right? As human beings, we don't know everything, right? And there's a moment where we have to learn to step into faith and trust, right? This is an invitation again to enter life and not be fearful to take step forward, even if we don't see clearly, right? I think this is always, and we'll see in chapter 11, this will be reinforced, this courage and audacity to just walk, even you don't see, you're walking, right? You're taking a risk, you're making a decision, right? This is the invitation. Don't be afraid to step into life, right? Don't be afraid to transgress. Don't be afraid to make the wrong decision. Don't be afraid, because as you step into life, this is the beginning of your walk of faith. Am I making sense? Is this making sense to the remaining people who are left in the room? Okay, great. So in conclusion, right, let me briefly conclude so we can go. Right? There seems to be a third path here, right? There's the path of the just, there's the path of the wicked, right? Moral path of the just, following the law, immoral path of the wicked, right? Crooked. And then there is a third way, which I think Solomon is sensing, right? In his confusion, he's sensing there's a third way to live. There's a third way to dwell in the world. Yeah, there's the way to go by the rules and do everything by the book. Yeah, there's the way to throw everything away and do what I want, right? He's done both, by the way. But then there's a third way, which brings the two together, right? This is the path of faith and trust, where you walk without knowing, in the hope, right, that things will be revealed to you rather than you knowing. You cannot receive wisdom as long as you know, or as long as you don't care to know. You see the two paths? Path of the righteous, I know. Path of the non-righteous, I don't care. Right? Path of the wise, I don't know, and I'm going to find out by entering this journey of life, right? So this is really beyond the religious notion of faith, right? This is an invitation to enter life fearlessly, knowing that there is a truth to be found in taking that risk, right? There is wisdom to be found in entering life fully without necessarily knowing everything before you do so, right? Okay, there's so much more to say, but I have to stop for now. Any questions or comments or clarifications? Okay, great. All right, chapter 11 for next time. Chapter 11 and 12 for next time. So you do reading assignment on chapter 11 and 12 for next time. We will continue in this direction of trust, entering without knowing, taking risk, right? This is part of the philosophy of the book of Ecclesiastes, right? Remember, we talked about receiving. Now we're talking about walking in the darkness. Both complete loss of control, right? First one, you know you can't control, you can't grasp, you surrender and you receive. The second one, you don't know, you have no clue, but you're still walking, right? Both are attitudes, right, that Ecclesiastes is teaching us. Okay, let me stop the recording.